If nursing is valued, we can change the course of this nursing shortage as well as help the healthcare crisis. And I don't believe there's anybody out there who couldn't argue that healthcare is in a crisis right now. And to your point, we are the largest group of healthcare providers in the United States.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angela Rosa DiDonato.
And I'm Marian Leary.
And you're listening to Amplify Nursing, a Penn nursing podcast supported by the Pinola Fund for Innovation in Nursing.
Amplify Nursing features nurses who are leading the way in science, policy, and innovation.
Our guests defy stereotypes, define practice, and disrupt convention.
We highlight the breadth and depth of nursing influence on society by amplifying nurses who are pushing boundaries and breaking down barriers to build a new paradigm.
Today on Amplify Nursing, we talk with Dr. Sharon Pearce. Sharon is a practicing CRNA, former president of the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology, and current co-chair of the Commission for Nurse Reimbursement. In this episode, we talk about the genesis of nursing care in hospitals, current payment models, and the importance of having a seat at the table. So, hi, Sharon. Thank you so much for coming to speak with me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been waiting to have this opportunity. I listened to your podcast, and so now to get to be a guest is a dream come true for me.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I also enjoy the Behind the Mask podcast. Fantastic.
Oh,
specifically the history series. I think it's probably one of the great things that we can do is to share our history with each other.
Absolutely agreed.
So we're going to talk a lot of different things, but let's start with, how did you get into nursing? How did you become a CRNA?
Oh my goodness. Well, I knew I wanted to be a nurse since the second grade. And whenever I was in nursing school, my first degree was an associate's degree, and I had to have my tonsils taken out whenever I was 19 years old. And I told the man who put me to sleep, who was a CRNA, I said, I want to do what you do one day. And he just kind of chuckled and said, oh, yeah, sure. 10 years later, I went to work for him. So as soon as I saw a CRNA, whenever I rotated through the operating room, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And interestingly enough, it was a bad airway case, and the patient turned black as they could be, and they were having a hard time getting them intubated. And why I decided, hey, that's what I want to do, I'm still not certain, but it is what it is. So that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it says a lot about your sense of adventure.
Well, I like the way you think.
So you have had a fantastic career as a CRNA. You have been a leader in our national organization, a presence to be reckoned with for sure. And, your most recent project is the Commission for Nurse Reimbursement.
It is. And I am happy and proud to be a part of this.
And this is really, really exciting. So can you tell us exactly what that means? What is the Commission for Nurse Reimbursement?
Well, the Commission for Nurse Reimbursement is looking at taking nurses in the hospital from the room rate and move them from a cost side to a revenue side. Nurses have been reimbursed, third-party reimbursed, CRNAs rather, have been third-party reimbursed since 1986. We were the first nurses to receive third-party reimbursement. Nurse practitioners started getting third-party reimbursement in 2001. However, nurses in a hospital, you're lumped right into the room rate. So you can't quantify nursing and what they do. And you can't value nurses if you don't quantify it. Unfortunately, unless there's a dollar sign somewhere, things get lost, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And can you talk about why this is so important? Like, how did we get here? How has it been that nurses have been the largest piece of the healthcare community? Probably, I would argue one of the most important pieces of the whole healthcare team. And yet we've never been valued like that from a monetary basis. Yeah.
Well, it kind of started in about the 1920s and 1930s. Hospitals used to be deplorable places that only the indigent went to. Well, then nurses started providing care in the hospitals at this point in time, and they would third party bill. They would bill the families, whomever they were taking care of. Well, guess what? All of a sudden, you could see that outcomes were a whole lot better if you had nursing care. Well, who ran hospitals back in the 1930s? Men ran hospitals in the 30s, and what nursing was at that time almost predominantly female. So the hospitals started noticing that the outcomes were better for patients if nurses were involved, but they needed to somehow control nursing. And so they started looking around and thinking, okay, what can we do? So they looked to the hotel industry and said, the maids bundled in with the room rate. Let's bundle nurses in with the room rate. Now, let's just think about this for a minute. Nursing was the only economic vehicle for women at this particular point. So, what do you think would have happened if nurses wouldn't have been bundled in with the hospital rate and devalued? What do you think would have happened for women writ large if that wouldn't have happened?
That would have been a game changer.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's the reason why nurses are seen as a cost. And that's what the goal of the commission is to pull nursing out of the cost side. So what happens? Do you fund cost or no, you don't? So whenever hospitals decide that they have got to cut costs, where do they cut it? Anything that they see on the cost side of the columns. And so that means nursing.
Yeah. And I think it shined such a huge light on that during the pandemic. Everyone outside, I think, of healthcare was really caught off guard by the fact that we were so incredibly short-staffed from day one. And then as things got worse and worse, and people dropped off because they were sick or they were burnt out or we were just overwhelmed with patients, that the outsiders were so surprised. I remember reading a New York Times article, and the person who wrote the article was like completely shocked that this happened. And I just remember thinking, why are you shocked? It's been this way for forever.
Well, if the commission's work is not successful ultimately, this whole problem is going to be exacerbated, right? 50% of all nurses leave the bedside within 2 years of joining the profession. 50%. And do you think it's going to get any better going forward? And I love millennials. If you ever listen to me talk on podcasts, I always talk about how much I love millennials. And the reason why is they won't put up with the things that we put up with, right? I've been a nurse for 40 years. And I remember when we used to have to get up whenever the doctor come onto the unit. Things have changed a whole lot since then. But the millennials and I'll say kids because to me they are kids, will not put up with this kind of stuff. So they're leaving in droves. Now, how can we fix the nursing shortage, make it an attractive place to come to? Nursing is valued. If you're valued, there's still a monetary piece to that. And so if nursing is valued, we can change the course of this nursing shortage as well as help the healthcare crisis. And I don't believe there's anybody out there who couldn't argue that healthcare is in a crisis right now. And to your point, we are the largest group of healthcare providers in the United States.
And that comes with a lot of power that we haven't really utilized.
Oh, that's a whole other podcast. but you are exactly right. You are exactly right about that.
So how did the commission begin?
Rebecca Love, who is a force of nature. Rebecca was the first nurse to do a TED Talk that went viral. If you get an opportunity, please look it up. It's very inspirational. And I had seen the TED Talk with Rebecca, and I just cold called her and asked her to be on my podcast. And she said, absolutely. Well, my co-host and myself just fell in love with her. So we asked her to be the guest on our 200th episode, which has been a lot of episodes ago.
Mhm.
So she and I built a relationship. She was speaking at the North Carolina nurses meeting. Well, she was going to be in Raleigh. I live right outside of Raleigh. And so I went and we had dinner with some other nurses. She's a big connector. And that's how I knew her. Well, she had been approached about putting together this commission, and she called me and asked me to be a commissioner. Who tells Rebecca Love no? Not me. And that's how I become a commissioner. Well, fast forward a little bit, and she called me one day and she said, I want you to co-chair this commission with me. And again, who tells Rebecca Love no? But she's a leader in the nursing profession. And she also knew that nurse anesthetists were the first APRN to get third-party reimbursement. So I'm a CRNA, so I'm co-chairing this commission with her. And let me tell you, we have huge goals. And what is it? Big, hairy goals. I know that, what is it, BAGs? Isn't that what the young people call them? We're making headway right and left. We are getting a lot of attention. Even Becker's picked up about the commission's work.
Mm, that's fantastic. So how does it work and how does it tie into the nursing shortage? I know we sort of touched on this just a little bit, but how do you think that this is going to make it that much better?
Well, what happens whenever you cut costs? You cut out resources for nurses. I can remember even whenever I was a brand new nurse and we used to have these little Foley kits to help you out. Well, they started cutting costs. Well, then guess what? Then they had the kits were piecemealed. So you had to go get every little thing. So you cut cost. And when you cut cost, what happens? Your patient load goes up, right? Your ratios are a problem. People are working harder with less resources. What happens whenever that happens? Then you get burned out. Then you're going to leave nursing.
Mm,
So if we can value nurses and give them the resources that they need, they're less likely to leave the profession. Does that make sense? Did I make a decent enough case there?
you made an absolutely amazing case.
And there's money in the system.
Yeah.
Whenever people tell you that there's not money in the system, North Carolina, our state treasurer just released a huge study on CEO pay in North Carolina. And CEO pay has doubled in 5 years, whereas nursing pay has only gone up by about 5%. And
Wow.
yeah, in North Carolina, hospitals paid 1.7 billion to top executives, whereas workers' wages remained flat during that. And now even workers lose about 20% of their paycheck to healthcare costs in a system that they work in that's violating them on top of that. And guess what? Even though CEO pay has gone up, there's no correlation between patient outcome and CEO pay.
Yeah.
There is a correlation between nurses' work and patient outcomes.
Yeah.
So there's money in the system. It's just going to the wrong place. I can't remember the exact number that the treasurer came out with, but if they decreased the CEO pay, I think it was like they could have hired 580 some more nurses in the system.
Wow.
Yeah. That's about the only thing you can say to that is wow.
Yeah. It seems like it's a big social problem, not just a nursing problem.
Yes. Makes you want to go back and be a CEO, right?
If you can't beat them, join them, I
That's
guess.
it. And
Oh,
sometimes I know you and that we have more degrees than they do.
yeah. True
I know you
story.
do. I know you do.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Yeah, it's a challenge to sometimes work in the system, seeing the flaws that are there. Okay, so we know that there's money in the healthcare system for this. So what is it that how do we support this initiative?
Great question. If you go to our website, the Commission for Nurse Reimbursement.com, and you can sign up for a mailing list, and you can send us a message. Whenever we started the commission and put out the all call, we received over 1,300 responses of people who wanted to be involved to work on committees. We have all kinds of committees that you could work on. And if you're interested in doing some work, just send in an email off of the website. I am the liaison to the Federal Advocacy Committee, and we're doing workshops. For instance, I just did a online workshop teaching people how to lobby. That's kind of one of my skill sets. We needed to teach people to be able to do that. We have got some illustrious people on this commission. We have CEOs of hospitals, and we have CNOs. We have other people who are interested. It's not just nurses. We're not just navel gazing, as somebody used to tell me about nurses sometimes. We have people from outside the system who are interested in seeing this initiative go forward. Now, do we think that this is going to happen overnight? No. Do we know what it will look like? No. We're working diligently on these things. Basically, we're trying to start the conversation, because at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of different minds that come up with an answer to a 100-year-old problem that we need to fix. But just think about it. Everybody in a hospital has a line item on the bill: occupational therapy, physical therapy, physicians, pharmacy. Everybody's got a line item, but nursing is invisible. And we need to bring nursing into the light. I mean, COVID helped that. Ironically, it was the year of the nurse whenever it happened in 2020. But I think it brought nursing in the forefront, and people value nurses. And we're the most trusted profession. The only year we were not knocked out of the top spot on the Gallup poll was 9/11, whenever firefighters took the top spot. Everybody knows a nurse. Everybody loves a nurse. But sometimes that's just not enough. You've got to value them. You've got to pay them.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the bigger challenges. The other thing too that I kind of would like to hear your opinion about, especially being part of a, nursing leadership organization, the difficulty of getting nurses together on the same page, especially when it comes to politics, has always been a real challenge.
You're correct about that. And nurses have an inherent bias, not just nurses, a lot of people. Whenever you say politics, it leaves a sour taste in your mouth. Well, everybody wants policy change. Well, there's politics involved in policy and policy change. And whenever I was teaching that class, like I was talking about lobbying, people get that they find that distasteful. We're all lobbyists, however. You started lobbying very young. You just didn't realize it. Lobbying to go to the ice cream store, or think about when you were 16 and you wanted the keys to the car. You made your case. That's what lobbying is. Or lobbying is teaching people about your issue. And so nurses think they don't like any of this stuff, but it's something that you always do. And as far as getting nurses on the same page, I don't know. That's a $10,000 question. And I don't necessarily know the answer to that. We can't even decide on what our entry level to practice is going to be. I don't see that happening. Not in my lifetime, I guess. I've been waiting 40 years. But we have been absolutely astonished by how many people are interested in this issue. So maybe this will be something that nurses can unite behind.
I totally agree with you. I think it would be really, really difficult to ask any nurse, to not get behind are you valued and do you want to be compensated appropriately? I think that, it's the universal touch point, I think, for any nurse of any level, so hopefully it will be the uniting factor because there's so many things that have yet to have been.
Well, that's why we're imploring any of your listeners, please go to our website, sign up for email updates, sign up and help us because it's going to take all of us, well, a large part of us. There's what, 4 to 5 million of us in the United States. I'll just settle for 1 million of you coming to help us with this. How's that? I'll keep my expectations small.
Agreed. I think 20% is a pretty good ask, and it should be fairly doable, 20 to 25%. Yeah. So is there anything else that you want to throw out there that you want to make sure that people are aware of? I want to be, respectful of your time.
Well, just pay attention to what's happening. Offer to help. Offer to help. We need nurses to assist us with this goal. It's going to be a long range goal, but we're going to move this needle. And nursing needs this. Healthcare system needs this. Nurses are a solution to the healthcare problems. They're constant innovators. They're MacGyvers. They can make anything work. And as Bethany Hall Long, who is the lieutenant governor in Delaware, who's running for governor, she will be the first nurse in the country to be governor when she wins. What she always tells me is when a nurse comes to a wall, they either go under it, over it, or around it. And this is a solvable problem that all the nurses, we can make this happen. Go to the website, sign up, volunteer, and I will see you when this is done.
For today's end conversation, we're joined by Dr. Nancy Blumenthal. Nancy is my colleague and Associate Program Director for the DNP program and the Director for the Postmaster's track. Hello, Nancy.
Hey, Angela. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you coming on to talk with us today about the interview that I did with Sharon Pearce. What did you think?
Well, first, she was amazing. So compelling and great energy. I learned so much. Had to keep pausing and Googling to keep up with the two of you.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the work that she's doing with the Commission for Nurse Reimbursement. I think it's so incredibly important that nursing really be recognized for the value that we bring to the system. And it's really appalling that it's taken until now before we're even having the conversation.
I think what has challenged us since way back is that we have made ourselves part of the fabric. And, being a traditionally female discipline, we've been assigned maternal attributes. And I always say, the first person anybody takes for granted is their mom, right? So I loved listening to your conversation. I kept thinking what has to happen here is that we label what we're doing so that we can no longer be taken for granted. And, she had a great line about, everybody knows a nurse, everybody loves a nurse, but that's not the same as valuing a nurse. And what I really liked about that remark is I thought, well, that puts the responsibility back on us to articulate exactly what we're doing and what it's worth. Because if people can't see it, it makes it very hard to value it specifically. If you can't value it, then you can't assign, a reimbursement for it.
Yeah, you're so right. And it's one of the things that I kind of explain to people when I'm talking to people about the value of nursing. And I always say, if all of the nurses decided not to show up to work today, people would die.
Mhm.
And that's not dramatic. Like, nobody knows where the medicine is. No one knows how to work the pumps. No one knows, no one could walk in to a hospital and just, riff on nursing. And it would be a really, really dangerous thing to happen. And the fact that no one sees that as a value, or a potential problem.
It's the thing. That's a big statement and well put out there, but I would turn that right back, hand us a mirror and say, what is it that we do? I'm not sure that we ourselves can articulate it to a line item the way Sharon was describing. I think it's a great place to start. That's what I thought was the challenge. Like when everything works, it becomes invisible. And people forget that it happens because it's working. And that is true at every level of nursing, whether you're at, point of care at the bedside or in somebody's home, or whether you're in the boardroom representing a whole contingency of staff. If it's working, it's just magic. It's just invisible. So miss the opportunity to bullet point exactly what's happening. And I think we can take a page from other disciplines that have learned how to do that pretty effectively.
Yeah, I agree with you there. We could
One
definitely
time,
learn.
I was negotiating a contract, and I was talking to my husband, who's not in healthcare, but has an MBA. And what he said was, look, if it doesn't hurt them to pay you, they'll never listen to what you have to say. And I thought that was such a profound statement. And it ties in with the themes here about value and worth. One of our challenges is there are so many of us. I can remember earlier in my career negotiating for people who reported to me that, for higher compensation. And the response I got was, well, if we give them a raise, then we have to give everybody across the board a raise. So we've never really been able to master merit compensation the way other disciplines have been able to do, or performance-based compensation at the individual level. That's a piece of this as well, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're bringing in a lot of nuance to the conversation. And I think that just shows how much work needs to be done on this. And I know that the commission is putting together payment models, and I know that they're trying to find those pieces. And it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it.
What I really am optimistic about is that this work is being done by leaders who are nurses. Rather than having somebody external to the discipline writing job descriptions or writing compensation packages, having people who speak the language, who have the insight to speak on behalf of the discipline, that holds a promise, rather than having, somebody external do that. I think that's in part why the current system has come to be.
Yeah, because decisions were made for us and we weren't part of those conversations. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
So I think
that's, we own that we have to say today we own that. I will say in another era, perhaps that was not true, but, I've been in positions where the job description was written by HR because that's who wrote job descriptions. And part of my experience was rewriting job descriptions to imbue them with nursing tenets and values rather than job tasks.
Yeah.
Although I guess in part this is asking to go back to articulating what the job tasks are.
Right. And like you noted in our pre-conversation before we started recording, the fact that we need to be able to quantify, what it is that we do very eloquently in order to be seen appropriately.
As an educator who works with seasoned nurses, one of the things I revel in, and I'll talk with scholars about this all the time, you name the 5 best nurses, people who you think are, oh, such a great nurse, and describe them, they don't have the same things in common. So that's a beautiful thing about nursing as a science, is it uses a lot of different great attributes. And that context makes it hard to boil down. But hard, but not impossible. It's a daunting task before them. So I was quick to get to that website and sign up. I loved the clarity that Sharon gave us on what lobbying is, and suddenly recognized how much lobbying we all do all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
As an organization.
Yeah, I never thought of myself as a lobbyist until after that conversation.
Well, now I'm
Sharon.
only going to look at you as a lobbyist.
Amplify Nursing is hosted by Dr. Angela Rosa DiDonato and Marion Leary, and produced by the University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing, with special thanks to Jonathan Zhu for his assistance. Music for the podcast was created by Harper Leary. The podcast is made possible by the Krista and Rich Pinola Fund for Innovation in Nursing.
Follow us on Twitter at Penn Nursing. Until next time, keep pushing over, under, around, and through. We want to thank you for listening to the Amplify Nursing podcast and remind you to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you enjoy your podcast listening. And if you can do us a solid, please rate and review us as well. It will go a long way in amplifying our episodes.